In order to talk about what's really happening, it's time for some College Football Confidential with our friend John Talty, who is joining the show now. And John, a lot has happened in the world of general managers when it comes to college football. We see multi-million-dollar contracts being handed out. I know that there's still some sticker shock from Courtney Morgan at Alabama a few months ago. But before we get into everything that's been happening, I want to start with, John, what is a college football general manager? What do they do?
Well, the great thing about that, Emily, is it depends, right? It's school to school. There are different definitions of what that role is. And I think that's really what's so unique about this moment in college football is that if you go to the NFL, you know what a general manager is. There might be a little bit different power structure program to program. Sometimes the head coach has more of a say. But generally speaking, the general manager at the NFL is going to make draft picks, be involved in free agent signing, be involved in hiring, firing. At the college level, for the most part, that's not the case. A lot of those responsibilities are really on the head coach. And the GM could be a more of an evaluator, could be more of a glorified recruiter, could be a cap person. There's all these different ways that people are using them right now. And I think that's where we're seeing the evolution of it. I think what you're seeing, though, is some more NFL guys are starting to come into the game. I talked to Mike Lombardi at UNC the other day. I think he's probably the best example of that, a former NFL general manager now working with Bill Belichick, being heavily involved in the procurement of players, salary cap, all of those different things. But every program is doing it differently, and so sometimes you have a guy who's a GM who's not really that involved, and other times you have someone like James Blanchard at Texas Tech who really is kind of a general manager at that college level who's heavily involved in offering players and bringing guys into Texas Tech.
What I think is so interesting about this discussion is we have two guys who have experience in front offices in college football. Smoke, of course, was a former general manager. So it's been a couple of years since you were a GM. But what was that role when you stepped into it versus what maybe it's evolved into even just a few years later?
Well, going into it, I just wanted to be solely on personnel and the structure and the construction of the team.
Like the NFL.
Like the NFL. I wanted to know what Coach Loxley wanted the University of Maryland team to look like and build it through his eyes. I never wanted to be the 11th recruiter, but if there's a person that I've kept some type of contact with or we've made some type of connection, I'll help recruit them. But I never wanted to be the closer or the lead because that was more of a position coach or an assistant coach or somebody around there. But looking at it, it wasn't really me.
Yeah, I think the definition of a general manager, like John was bringing up, really comes down to the head coach, what head coach you're working for. So what Kalen DeBoer might ask of Courtney Morgan or Joey McGuire of James Blanchard or Chad Bowden and Lincoln Riley, which, Chad Bowden, first time I've ever seen it, but he put out a statement after he got hired and thanked the AD, right? So we are entering a completely different time of college football where the relationship between and the balance between a college head coach and the general manager is very, very different. And all these guys are going to have very, very different responsibilities. Even my first 2 years at Washington, my only 2 years, that's an evolving relationship. Hey, this is what we expect out of you. Hey, versus this is how we think your skill set can best translate to impacting the bottom line for our program. So different places are going to value different things. And right now for North Carolina, Michael Lombardi, who John talked about, Mike Lombardi probably has a better grip on 98% of, or more than 98% of college player personnel executives out there, just having to deal with the CBA in the NFL, right? Now on the high school side, he's probably flying blind a little bit. He's probably drinking through a fire hose. It's relatively new to him. So there are a lot of different factors when you start looking at GMs. It's not all the same one job.
But that's where the fine line comes in, though, Coop. You have to have a good balance of, yes, understanding cap, roster construction, but also have the understanding of where are those high school connections? Who am I going to talk to if I want to go into South Carolina, the low country of South Carolina? And not having that can have you behind the chains a little bit when it comes to high school recruiting. The portal side, I think they're going to crush it. But the connection on the high school side, they're going to struggle a little bit until they get some high school college coaches that can come in, understand the area, and recruit properly for them.
Yeah, you guys nailed it. And it's interesting. That's kind of exactly what Lombardi told me was that, they, I think, are comfortable with the portal, very comfortable with salary cap and things like that. But, they just didn't have those pre-existing relationships, right? And I think that to start in the portal, when you have to strike fast on guys, usually it's based on pre-existing relationships. You recruited them out of high school, maybe you finished second, kind of kept in touch. They hit the market, you can strike fast, and you can add a guy and get him on campus very quickly. They just really didn't have a lot of those relationships to start up. So I think it was, a little bit of a struggle maybe for them to get it going initially, even though they knew what they wanted and had that kind of lockstep vision between head coach and GM, which I think is so critical. I think they'll have even more success moving forward, building up some of those relationships, and of course now filling out their staff with guys who do have, lots of recruiting chops, down the line.
The NFL had the Senior Bowl last week in Mobile. And what I thought was really interesting, you talk to a lot of young scouts where a lot of these guys, they get their start in college football. But the more transactional that college football becomes, the water gets warmer for these guys in the NFL. The other thing that is not lost on these scouts that have years and years of experience is the money. Financially, you were seeing GMs at this level get 7 figures. And a lot of guys in the NFL, they look at some of the guys that are getting this job and they say, you know what? I can do that. What are we even talking about? And I'll do that. Listen, if we're going to work all the way around the calendar, 12 months out of the year, I might as well be being financially compensated for it. So I think what you're going to see here is you're going to see more crossover between the NFL and college from a personnel standpoint than we've ever seen before. And I think it's going to make it a more competitive marketplace, but you're going to be seeing a lot more guys with Michael Lombardi. There's some names out there right now that I think a lot of people would be surprised about to see that are really kind of involved in some of these collegiate GM jobs.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that you've mentioned the money side of it, not just from the salary of the general manager. But John, I want to get your take on this because, Cooper mentioned the NFL side of it, and we could see a little bit more of that trickle into college football. How does the financial side of it in terms of managing a roster financially and everything that could potentially happen with the house settlement and rev share, how does that factor into the importance right now of a general manager?
Yeah, it's critical. And to Cooper's point, I've heard from agents, search firm people that they're getting a lot of interest from guys in the NFL. And it's for a lot of the reasons that Cooper laid out. It's that there's a lot of money to be made. And, there's kind of this new opportunity to grow maybe beyond what they're doing in the NFL right now. The challenge, at least from some of the people that I've talked to, is that, again, like we said to start the show, it's not quite a general manager job yet. So the skill set that might be very applicable in the NFL hasn't quite been there yet at the college level. I do think that's where it's evolving, though, because, again, if you have experience negotiating contracts at the NFL level, well, that is very valuable right now. If you have experience putting together staffs, putting together different, scouting teams, whether it's scouting the portal, that's experience that these guys are going to have had from the NFL, looking at different teams, getting ready for free agency. So I think the skill set that people have in the NFL is becoming more and more applicable to college. I think that's why, again, you're seeing more and more people want to get involved and having to negotiate with agents, having to deal with the challenges that come with that. That's where I think someone with NFL experience could have a lot of success. I think the key, I think Smoke made this point earlier, is that pairing that person maybe with a player personnel person who has more of a recruiting background, who can help them navigate the unique challenges of the college system where, again, there's essentially 2 free agencies right now. It's a little different than NFL. Guys haven't been able to sign binding contracts. There's all these unique things from college that do not apply to the NFL that those guys are going to need some help kind of getting up to speed on to start things off.
You have experience with both, Smoke, NFL and college.
And where it comes in is just understanding what your head coach wants.
Yeah.
And to me, there has always been 3 types of different evaluators or general managers. Well, you have Brandon Beane, for an example. Brandon Beane's strength is putting together a staff that works well with each other and just dividing up and delegating out jobs. Then you have Omar Khan, that's up there at the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's really a cap guy. Mm-hmm. So he has to have strong personnel people around him to do so. Brad Holmes now, he wants nothing to do with the cap. He's just a pure talent evaluator. So when you look at it, your head coach is the one that needs to align everyone and make sure that whoever that he brings in the building, if his general manager is a cap constructor and his DPP is the one that's going to evaluate a lot of the film and set the board, well, this is fine. But you have to make sure that alignment and make sure that everybody understands exactly what their job is on a day-to-day basis.
These jobs are so vast. You talk to people that are interviewing for them, and they're not this glorious jobs that I think a lot of people think, oh, you're a general manager of this school or you're working at one of the top programs in the country. That is not really the case. 20% of your job, if you're lucky, is doing the things that you got in the industry to do. It's talent acquisition, it's talent acquisition, building a board. and really impacting the bottom line. Somebody's got to do the contracts, right? The role of the recruiter in the general manager is gone. Now it's the negotiator. Now the skill sets are starting to evolve, and head coaches, athletic directors, they're starting to adapt as this landscape changes rapidly. And the skill set that you might think traditionally of a roster builder has changed. It's more about, yes, identifying players that we want on our team, but it's also about identifying and establishing value year to year financially. And I think that's kind of where the new age general manager comes into play.
And it feels like for the most part, I guess from like a conversation standpoint and just from a general know-how amongst NFL fans, is they understand what a GM is. We know because they're critical of them oftentimes. But John, why is it important for college football fans to understand what a general manager does for their program?
Well, I think fans are starting to get it. I think you see the reaction to USC hiring Chad Bowden, or if you think about the reaction to Alabama fans and keeping Courtney Morgan when USC initially went after him. I think you're seeing that fans are starting to realize the importance, especially the fans who are probably watching the show. They probably know who their GM, because these are the hardcore fans who love it so much. And I think that's where you're seeing some evolution. I do think if you're a fan, why should you care? Well, for all the reasons that Cooper and Smoke just laid out. And this person's going to be involved in putting together the roster. When you think about, why guys might join the team from out of the transfer portal, maybe your GM's a great negotiator. Maybe that's why you're able to get a guy on a good deal that's able to allow them to spend more in other areas. I think that's all going to be really important moving forward, as I think, especially in the House era, if that goes forward as we expect, I think there will be more money. And I think how you spend your money, how you evaluate, where you place it, I think is going to be huge for which programs are the most successful. And so if you have a GM who can execute the head coach's vision, I think that's going to be huge. And I think the other thing, and again, every GM's a little bit different, but I think for a lot of GMs, they're taking off responsibilities from the head coach. They're dealing with parents calling is upset, all right, maybe the GM's handling that situation when they talk about more money or how they can best use that player. You're freeing your head coach up to do the things that are most important. And so I think having that partnership is really important. And that's why you're seeing schools spend upwards of $1 million to make sure that they have the right person to pair with their head coach.
Yeah, to John's point, these guys matter. I look at LSU as a perfect example. I think Brian Kelly's first 3 years in Baton Rouge is kind of a testament to a guy that got down to Baton Rouge and said, hey, I want to compete for a national championship. I had done it at Notre Dame. I wanted to do it at the highest level. But down there, you're swimming in a completely different end of the pool. Year 3, he hires Austin Thomas from Ole Miss. Austin Thomas has been all over the place. Now the associate AD in Baton Rouge. What they have done in the last 2 years or year and a half cycle, both on the high school side to marry that up with the transfer portal, that matters. They have the number 1 class in the transfer portal. They have a top 10 class in high school. That work within a span of 16, 18 months will change the short and long-term projection of LSU's program. And without that person, without that structure, that ceases to exist. And that happens in Oxford with Billy Glasscock. That happens all over the place. Chad Bowden in South Bend deserves a ton of credit, right? So these guys matter. You have to be the eyes and ears, as you know, for the head coach when he's focused on winning ball games. Who is the person that's going to advance the agenda for the program, worried about 2026, 2027, 2028? What are the things that we need to do to stay ahead of the competition? That's their job. They have to keep their program one step ahead of the opposition, and that's why these guys matter. I'm very, very glad they're starting to get the credit that they deserve.
You hit 2 things on the head, Coop, and that was really the way that you project. And being a really good GM, you have to be able to go into a room and say, hey, you know what, we have 3 guys here, but I'm projecting the one that we have lower to be the best one in 2 years. So you just have to sit there and just believe in my instincts and my understanding of what it is. And then also setting your roster and making sure that you have 3 guys. We can't have them stacked in that way, but making sure they have multiple positional flex within your team. So if you lose a running back, that running back can go over and play linebacker. Why? Because you're putting that time in to understand that we're over athleticism than just one positional player.
Yeah, this role of general manager is just going to continue to get more and more important as the sport continues to change, which is why I'm so glad we did some College Football Confidential with our friend John Talty. John, appreciate you being here.